Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining. We are just doing a last minute live stream for this evening. I have some painting to do, so I thought that we could listen to the opening statements and closing statements in the Menendez trial. Kind of go back in time and listen, since we have some new news this week in the Menendez trial. How are you guys doing this evening? I did put out a video a little late last night. I wanted to go live, but I was way too tired by that time. So, the Menendez brothers have been fighting for some time and filed a couple different types of appeals in order to get a reduced sentence or get parole or possibly be freed now. So that's something that they have been working with Mark Geragos on for a long time. This was even before the Netflix movie came out. So if you saw the movie, what did you think of it? You can drop your thoughts in the comment section. But pretty much, I kind of want to recap what happened yesterday. The judge resentenced the brothers to 50 years to life in prison. So they are eligible to go before a parole board here soon. And the board would need to consider if the case and the issue on the ruling to ultimately decide if the brothers should be released. The attorney, Mark Geragos, and his team have argued that the boys have been rehabilitated after serving more than 30 years on their sentence. And if you recall, this incident happened back in 1989 in Beverly Hills. And we are going to have a listen. And of course, there were two trials, but the first trial was on television, which was really big. So that's the trial we are going to take a look at today. And I will also just give you a peek of my project that I'm doing. I'm going to do a sign like I have for myself for my podcast here. This is laser engraved here. And I'm doing one for Amy with Para Women Radio. So I kind of got a start on it. Sorry that this is not the best lighting, but I actually need the lighting to paint. So I'm going to be working on this while we listen to the trial. And what I can do is set up my camera so that we can get kind of a view of the painting if you want. Let me just jump over to chat too and make sure that I'm saying hi to everybody. Happy Wednesday to you all. And let me jump in here and get this camera set up. I am practicing my StreamYard skills, so hopefully I get better. And the next time we plan to go live is actually going to be, I believe, Friday morning we're going live. I'm going live with Amy, and we're going to be talking about autoimmune disease and healing from cancer. We also have a special guest who's going to join us on Friday. We have Rose, who's going to help us host, and Nicole Atkinson. actually is going to stop by, because if you didn't know, she is also a breast cancer survivor. So all four of us are going to chat about autoimmune disease, cancer, healthy living, and kind of chat about that. So if that is up your alley, please join us. We would love to have you join the conversation. Please also remember to hit that thumbs up button so that this goes out into the algorithm, emojis as well. And I am going to enter the studio here with our craft camera and bring that up. So I am dealing with an echo, so maybe we won't do it unless. There we go. All right. Let me get my tripod set up. How are you guys doing this Wednesday? Get that set up. Hope you're doing well. I am starting out with this metallic-y blue type color, just so you can get a look at that. And then we are going to begin our live stream with our clip. So stand by here. This is from Court TV. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you guys. Screen share. Here we go.
Well, are present. That's Ms. Jill Lansing and Mr. Michael Burt. All right, and also Detective Zoller from the Beverly Hills Police Department is present. And as I indicated to you when we were involved in jury selection, you are the jury that will decide the case of Erik Menendez. And this morning we've already heard the opening statement in regards to the co-defendant. Since it related only to the co-defendant, there was no need for you to be present, and that's why we had you wait upstairs. I'll make some remarks to you this morning, and because it's almost noon, we'll have to take the break until after lunch to give everybody a chance to catch a bite to eat before we actually start the opening statements in regards to the defendant, Erik Menendez. But let me make a few remarks to you. First of all, as you're all aware, when you were last here, we gave you those little blue dots to put on your badges, and you have them. That designates you as the jury for the defendant, Erik Menendez. The other jury involved with the co-defendant, Lyle Menendez, have gold dots on their badges, and that assists us in identifying them, and it should also assist you in identifying the jury for the other defendant. The rule is that you must not have any contact with those other jurors, and the reason we have you each with your own separate color coding is so that you will know who the other jury is and you would not have any contact with them. And it's very important that you follow that instruction, and I'll go through a little more about other things that I've already mentioned to you during jury selection as to how you must conduct yourself during the course of the trial. That is, that you must not be exposed to anything outside of the courtroom that in any way could influence you in how you decide this case, that your decision must be made only on what happens in the courtroom. Let me ask, before I get further along, have any of you been exposed to anything about this case in any form, whether it be a conversation, overhearing something someone else said, saying anything in the newspaper, on radio, television, anywhere? Have you been exposed to anything about this case since we last had you in court?
No.
All right, and please understand that that's going to be your obligation throughout the trial, not to be exposed to anything. And periodically during the trial, I will ask you the same question. And even if I don't ask, if something happens where you happen to be exposed to something, if you would let me know by writing me a note so that we can discuss it. There will be continuing news coverage about this case throughout the trial. And there's also going to be a television camera in the courtroom that will focus on the witnesses and the lawyers during testimony. That camera is positioned in the corner there in the ceiling, and it won't focus on you. The rule is that the TV cameras cannot focus on or photograph the jurors, and that will be the rule throughout the trial, that is prohibited. Occasionally, there'll be a still photographer from the newspapers in the courtroom, and likewise, the rule is that the photographer is prohibited from photographing the jurors. The reason these cameras are in the courtroom is just so that the public has full access to the trial proceedings, but you are right here. You have more access than anybody else. You're seeing it as it's going on. And please follow my instruction not to look at or watch or listen to any of the news coverage as it occurs during the trial. You are here watching it in court, and you must make your decision based upon what happens in the courtroom. For those of you who have an interest in the newspaper coverage of the case, the court staff will cut out newspaper articles and create a scrapbook for you so that after the trial, if you have an interest in that, we would have collected that for you so that you could have that for your purposes. But at this point, the important thing is to remember that you must not look at any of that news coverage yourself during the course of the trial. The lawyers will be making opening statements to the jury. There are one or two matters I will be discussing with them before those opening statements. If things run true to form here, the opening statements will take about an hour and a half to complete. And then if there's still time this afternoon, then we'll start testimony after the opening statements. And then we'll have the other jury come down, and both juries will be present in the courtroom for the beginning of the actual testimony. One thing that will occur, as I've indicated, that throughout the trial, there will be occasions when only one jury will be in the courtroom and the other jury will not. And when I hear of that or learn of that in advance, I'll certainly let you know of it. The purpose of opening statements, as they will be made to you here, is to give you an idea of what the evidence will be, what each side expects the evidence to be during the course of the trial. And as I've told you before, and as I will remind you throughout the trial, the statements of the lawyers, whether it's an opening statement, argument to the jury at the end of the case, or throughout the trial, none of their statements are evidence in this case, and you will not hear any evidence until after all of the opening statements have been completed and the first witness takes the witness stand. And your obligation is to keep an open mind on the case until all the evidence has been presented. All right, since it's just about noon, I'm going to excuse you until 1:30, at which time we will resume with these proceedings. Do not discuss this case with anyone. Don't form any opinions about it. And if you would return to this courtroom at 1:30, at that time, we'll start with the opening statements in this case. right, have a good lunch hour, and we'll see you. All right, let's proceed then.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence will show in this case that Erik and Lyle Menendez conspired to murder their parents, Jose and Mary Menendez. They planned what Erik Menendez called the perfect murder. Pursuant to the plan, the defendants drove down to San Diego on August 18th, 1989, and bought 2 Mossberg 12-gauge shotguns from a Big 5 sporting goods store using false identification. They committed the killings on a Sunday night, a night when the Menendez household maid, was not there. The defendants had a ready alibi when questioned by police. Erik Menendez told the police that he and his brother went to see Batman in Century City, and that they then went to Santa Monica to the Taste of LA. It was some kind of a wine tasting function. According to Erik Menendez, they just happened to come back home to pick up some false ID, some fake ID for a night on the town when they came upon the brutal slaying of their parents. The defendants were the ones to call 911 and report the killings initially to the police. The investigation into the murders of Mary and Jose Menendez was thus begun. The investigation revealed that Jose Menendez suffered a shotgun wound to the back of his head, as well as 4 other shotgun wounds. Mary Menendez suffered 10 shotgun wounds, including a contact wound to her left cheek. 2 shotgun blasts shattered panes in the French doors in the family room where the victims were killed. On August 24th, 1989, 4 days after the killings, Erik and Lyle Menendez went to Slavic Jewelers in Beverly Hills and purchased Rolex watches and money clips for some $15,000.
Chat for a minute. You can see Erik and his attorney writing notes to each other. If you watched the Netflix documentary, well, not a documentary, it's a movie, Monsters, they said in kind of the behind the scenes that she would do this to relax Erik because he was so nervous during trial. And sometimes these notes meant nothing. It was just to kind of get his mind off of what they were saying. So that's very interesting. So you're going to notice a lot of these notes going back and forth. So we'll continue.
The defendants thereafter collected $200,000 each on September 8th, 1989, and another $125,000 each on September 15th, 1989, in insurance proceeds from their father's life insurance policy. In addition to the defendant's alibi, the evidence will show that Erik Menendez tried to pin the crimes on others. On November 29th, 1989, over 2 months after the slayings, and with the investigation ongoing, Erik Menendez claimed that hitmen were responsible for the murders. He also claimed that Castro might be involved in the murders because his father, Jose Menendez, wanted to liberate Cuba. Defendant Erik Menendez was secretly taped in a conversation that he had with Craig Signorelli at Gladstone's restaurant in Malibu over dinner on November 29th, 1989. The defendant is heard to say, "I've known from the beginning. No clues, no one heard anything." The defendant then states his belief that Castro might have been involved in the killing of his parents. The defendant then says, "Man, we're talking about special hitmen, special shotguns, and knew exactly what they were doing in and out of the house. No one saw anything, no one heard anything. We're talking about serious hitmen." The evidence will show that the defendants nearly got away with their crimes. They had meticulously picked up all the shotgun shells from the family room. They had buried the shotguns, and they had indeed an alibi. With the investigation nearing 7 months in duration, the Beverly Hills Police Department finally received a break in the case, information which led to a search warrant on the home and office of Beverly Hills psychologist Jerome Oziel and the seizing of evidence implicating the defendants. With information relating to this evidence, Lyle Menendez was arrested on March 8, 1990, and defendant Erik Menendez was arrested on March 11, 1990 for the murders of José and Mary Menendez. Dr. Ozio will testify then on Halloween, October 31st, 1989, the defendant, Erik Menendez, said that he was having vivid dreams of his parents being murdered. He told Dr. Ozio, "We did it." Dr. Ozio asked him if he meant that he and Lyle had murdered his parents. Erik Menendez responded, yes. Erik Menendez then said that his father was too controlling. He criticized them. He made them feel inadequate and prevented them from doing what they wanted to do. He said that he and his brother discussed killing their father and getting him out of their lives. They couldn't see any freedom with their father around. Together, they decided to kill him. Pursuant to this conspiracy, the defendants drove all the way to San Diego and purchased 2 Mossberg shotguns with false identification 2 days before they would actually do the murders. Erik Menendez said that his mother had to be killed also because she would have been a witness and would have been miserable and suicidal without their father anyway. Erik Menendez told Dr. Ozio that he and Lyle surprised their parents walking into the room with their pump shotguns. Erik Menendez said his father cried out, "No, no, no." The brothers then began to blast away. After they had emptied their shotguns into their mother and father, their father was dead. But Erik said their mother, who ultimately sustained 10 shotgun wounds, was moaning on the floor and trying to crawl away. According to Erik Menendez, the brothers went back out to the car and reloaded, and Lyle then returned to finish off their mother. Erik Menendez said that they picked up the shotgun cartridge casings, removed their blood-spattered clothes, and placed their clothes into a bag. They put fresh clothes on and drove to a garbage dumpster where they threw away the bloody clothes and took their shotguns and buried them down an embankment off of Mulholland Drive. They then went to a wine tasting party to meet with Perry Berman. Mr. Berman was not there, so they arranged to meet him later that night. The defendants then returned to their house and called 911 as if they had just come upon the murder scene. The defendant, Erik Menendez, said that his father had recently nearly disinherited him, and he told Dr. Ozio that was another reason to get rid of his father. Erik Menendez said that there was no way to link them to the crime since the fingerprints were their fingerprints since they lived at the house, and there were no witnesses. No one could link them to the weapons, he felt. The weapons were not recovered by the police. He believed there was no way to tie them to buying the shotguns in San Diego. There was no way to link them to the murders in his mind. Erik Menendez said that they felt that they could never equal their father's accomplishments. Erik Menendez was pleased, however, at having pulled off the murders without being caught. The defendants said that they killed their father out of a desire to be free of his control, criticism, and impossible standards. Dr. Ozio, when he asked them why they killed their mother also, the defendant, Erik Menendez, said he discussed with his brother the fact that their mother did not deserve to die, but their plan was perfect, and they did not want to change the plan. The evidence will show that in January of 1988, Erik Menendez was involved in writing a screenplay in which the hero is...
All right, the objection is sustained at this point on that issue. Move on to something else, Mr. Trial.
Your Honor, there has been a previous ruling on this.
For a second, cuff you. I have a hard time with it. I do believe the brothers, and I do believe that they were abused. But it's also kind of scary to know that they spent a couple days planning this. However, I do feel they have been rehabilitated and they have done a lot of good in prison. I feel the fact that the family wants them out should speak volumes to people. So that's kind of where I am in that. You said you wanted to, to see them out. I hope it's okay if I just pin you real quick up here, your comment. Yeah, it's unfortunate because I think back in the 80s, this definitely wasn't something people were talking about as much as they are today. So they probably thought no one would believe them if they went for help. And then also, if you think about it, Erik pretty much turned himself in by talking to the therapist. Technically, I don't believe they would have found out that they did it. And if they did have evidence of it, because they're such a wealthy family, I'm not sure they would do anything about it anyway. Because you got to remember back in the 90s, the Los Angeles Police Department had a lot of hate for a lot of different cases. So they were always under the microscope. You're doing a live with Kelly. I'll pin that really quick. Also, we are going to be, Amy and I are going on panel on Friday with What's the Obsession with Kelly. I'm actually going to be giving away a raffle prize for Kelly to give away as a part of her premiere. It's going to be a laser engraved little cheese board, and whoever wins it can have it customized however they like. So please go check out the premiere on What's the Obsession on YouTube, and then join us Friday with me and Amy with Para Women Radio. I'm going to pin Amy as well, so you can, if you're rewatching this, that's Amy, Para Women Radio. You can go follow her and subscribe. She's almost to 7K, so help get her there. If you're watching this on the replay, please do. And now let's continue with the trial.
The evidence will show that the defendant, Erik Menendez, went to great lengths to cover up his crime, including lying to the police and blaming professional hitmen for what he and his brother had done. Erik Menendez bragged about committing the perfect murder, and he almost got away with it. The evidence will show.
Argumentative.
The evidence will show that Erik Menendez is guilty of premeditated and deliberate murders, the premeditated and deliberate murders of Mary and José Menendez.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Kuriyama. Ms. Abramson for the defense.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Good afternoon. This is large, but the print is very big, so it isn't going to take as long as it looks. This is opening statement, and as the court has indicated, this is supposed to be an outline of the evidence that we intend to prove both through live witnesses, through exhibits, through analysis of evidence. If this were a closing argument, you would properly expect me to start refuting what my opponent, Mr. Kuriyama, has just said. But this is not closing, this is opening. And the purpose of opening statement by the defense is to let you know what evidence we will be producing when our turn comes to put on our case. By telling you now what we intend to prove later, it is our hope and it is our expectation that you will do what you have promised to do during the jury selection process. You will keep an open mind. You will wait to hear both sides of the case. And
Objection, Your Honor, this is argumentative.
Yeah, let's just get to what you expect the evidence to be.
Well, I will, Your Honor. Mr. Kuriyama just told you that you will find his evidence to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt of first-degree murder. It is for you to wait until you have heard all the evidence for you to decide what is the truth.
Objection, Your Honor, this is argumentative.
All right, I think you're just about to finish what you were going to say.
Yes,
Ms.
Your Honor,
Abramson.
I'm refuting what Mr. Kuriyama just said.
All right, without arguing with Mr. Kuriyama and without arguing with anybody, you can finish your
Thank you, Your Honor.
your remarks.
And decide whether the presumption of innocence has been overcome by proof beyond a reasonable doubt that Erik Menendez is guilty of what he is charged with here, first-degree murder. At the end of the case, the judge will tell you what the law is that applies to this case, and he will instruct you on theories. Your job will first be to decide what are the true facts and how do they apply to the law as the judge gives it to you. Erik Menendez has entered a plea of not guilty to what he is charged with, first-degree murder with special circumstance. But as you may have learned during the jury...
Your Honor, I believe this is argumentative. She's going to give an opening statement. I think it's...
Okay,
Honor, can we
Mr.
approach-
Kuriyama, let's not argue and sit down, and you can be seated, Mr. Kuriyama. And Ms. Abramson, you are going afield here. Let's go to what you expect the evidence to be rather than how it relates to the legal theories.
I wasn't going to relate it to the legal theories.
Okay, well,
I
you're
was
going
merely
beyond
gonna-
what you anticipate here. Let's go on to the evidence.
All right. It will be your job to decide what kind of killing this is. That depends on what you come to believe was the reason for the act. The only question in this case is why did these killings occur? There is no issue as to who killed José and Mary Louise Menendez. Why they were killed is what the focus of all of our evidence will be on. We intend to provide you with the answer to that question. The following recitation of facts is a summary of what many, many witnesses, including Erik Menendez himself, will testify to. On Sunday, August 20th, 1989, Erik Menendez, 18 years old, along with his 21-year-old brother, Lyle Menendez, shot and killed their parents in their home on Elm Drive in Beverly Hills at approximately 10 p.m. They shot their parents with 2 shotguns they had bought in a store in San Diego 2 days before, on Friday, August 18th. At the time of the purchase, for which Erik Menendez signed the paperwork. They used the driver's license of a young man named Donovan Goudreau, who was a former friend of Lyle Menendez. Erik Menendez had carried Donovan Goudreau's driver's license for some time, both because he had lost his own license and because the Goudreau license, Donovan Goudreau being 21, allowed Erik Menendez entry into places that he otherwise would be barred from as underage. Having fired 2 shotguns in the middle of a residential neighborhood on a quiet night, Erik and Lyle Menendez expected an immediate police response. They waited. When no one came, they decided to leave and pretend that they had not been home at the time of the shooting. For the next hour, they engaged in a frantic and feeble effort to construct an alibi. They went to a nearby movie complex in the hopes of obtaining tickets for a showing in progress. They discarded the guns and the used shotgun shells. Erik discarded some clothing he had worn during the shooting. And they attempted to meet up with a friend in Santa Monica. Although they called the friend who was then at home and arranged a further meeting, Erik Menendez was by this time incapable of functioning. He was falling apart. Therefore, they went home and Lyle called the police. When the police arrived, they observed that Erik Menendez was obviously, visibly, dramatically hysterical. The prosecution will claim he was faking. Experienced police officers, his tennis coach who knew him and who came to the scene, saw that he was not faking. He was, as one of the officers will testify, traumatized. Later that early morning, he was interviewed by the police, and he lied to them. He was 18 years old. He had had a lifetime of abuse. He was in a state of shock, and he did not want to go to jail. Over the next weeks and months, Erik Menendez was torn by guilt, by remorse, by horror over what he had done. And his distress was visible to many witnesses. His family in New Jersey sent him to see a doctor. He had lost a tremendous amount of weight. He was suffering constant nightmares. He was repeatedly reliving the killings in the way that some Vietnam War veterans relive their experiences. The proof of this was that he told the police months later that he could still smell the smoke. Although he had done the act, he was traumatized by it and could not live with his guilty conscience. Now, you will hear expert testimony that this is not the post-crime mental state of a cold-blooded, calculating killer. This is the condition that a decent person, however imperfect, having been driven to do a violent act, regretting that violent act, finds himself in. As further proof of his lack of calculation, he confessed his involvement in his parents' killing within weeks. His first confession, in a rather tentative way, was to Craig Signorelli, who will be a witness for the prosecution in this case. Later, finding himself closer and closer to suicide, he confessed to L. Jerome Oziel. He did not tell either Craig Signorelli nor L. Jerome Oziel the whole story, for many reasons which will be explained to you, but not the least being a lack of trust in either of them. He did not tell them the true motivation for the killings. To do that, he would have had to reveal the shameful, in his opinion, secrets that he had spent most of his life concealing. But what he could not and did not do with them, he will do with you. He will tell you why he killed his parents. He will tell you the entire painful and difficult and complicated story of his life. On March 8, 1990, Lyle Menendez was arrested in Beverly Hills. Erik Menendez was in Israel on a professional tennis tour. When he learned of his brother's arrest and knew, of course, that the Beverly Hills police wanted to arrest him as well, he voluntarily got on an airplane, flew to London, from London to Florida, from Florida, Los Angeles. He was not in police custody. He came back voluntarily. He surrendered to Detective Zoller, knowing that by doing so, he was facing the gas chamber. Many witnesses will contribute their observations of Erik Menendez and his family over the years to present as complete a picture as possible of the treatment he and his brother received at the hands of their parents. Because the origin of this killing was a lifetime of abuse at the hands of those same parents. The characterizations of José and Mary Louise Menendez that follow as I recite the facts of that life to you are not my opinions. They are the impressions of people who knew them, of people who will testify about them to you. They are also the impressions, the evaluations, the profiling, if you will, of our expert witnesses in the field of battered children and battering parents. Our witnesses, who are family members, teachers, coaches, friends of the parents, friends of the sons, business associates of José Menendez, therapists who treated Mary Louise Menendez, and Erik Menendez himself, will paint a portrait of José and Mary Louise Menendez as parents that will make understandable to you how they could have died at the hands of their children, what they did to their children to bring this about. Our expert witnesses, we believe, are among the most highly credentialed professionals in the areas of research into child abuse and the evaluation and treatment of abused children. These are people, some of whom have never testified for the defense in a case before. They have been prosecution witnesses most of their careers. They will tell you what the effects of maltreatment are on a child, how these effects continue into adolescence and early adulthood, and most importantly, how the child shaped by abuse can be expected to react to threatening situations emanating from the abusers. They will try to teach you something that many of you may know a good deal about already, and that many of you will have only had a passing reference to. And that is what happens to the personality structure and the character structure of a child who does not get those basic things that we all know children need. And they will tell you how much worse the damage is when those children receive harmful and traumatic experiences at the hands of the people who are supposed to be nice. They will tell you how the personalities and perceptions of abused children fall into predictable patterns. How over the past 10 to 15 years, our awakening awareness and concern for the welfare of children has resulted in a large body of research in which profiles of abusive parents and of abused children have emerged. And most important, they will share with you their exhaustive evaluations of Erik Menendez. Each evaluation conducted for over more than 40 hours of interviewing with him. One of the experts has spent more than 200 hours with him. And their opinions that he indeed is a young man who suffered extreme forms of lifelong sexual, emotional, and physical abuse at the hands of both of his parents. Their opinions are not just based on their interviews with and their impressions of Erik Menendez alone. They are also supported by an extensive battery of objective psychological testing that was administered to Erik Menendez by a highly experienced forensic psychologist. The experts also examined all of Erik Menendez's school records and medical records. They read thousands of pages of witness interviews and interviewed witnesses who will be testifying here. And they examined the crime scene evidence, the same evidence that will be presented to you in this case by the prosecution. So what was it then that was done to Erik Menendez, and how did these events lead to homicide? The simple answer, which takes 28 pages to explain, and upon which we will expand in detail during trial, is this. For 12 years, between the ages of 6 and 18, my client, Erik Menendez, was sexually molested by his father. The pattern of molestation in which José Menendez engaged started out as inappropriate touching and arousal of his young son, and escalated in a carefully calculated pattern of grooming the child for his father's sexual gratification. This pattern included repeated acts of forcible oral copulation, sodomy, and rape, and the intentional infliction of pain by the use of foreign objects upon Erik's person. José Menendez's obvious purpose was to use his child's body to satisfy his lust. But this sexual exploitation of his young son was also part of a more pervasive characteristic of Mr. Menendez: his absolute need to control and to manipulate the people around him. Many witnesses will tell you that this was a man who enjoyed to an extraordinary degree asserting his power over those weaker than himself, especially his boys. Some of the witnesses who will testify in this case and who will support this characterization of José Menendez loved him in life and love him now. He was physically strong, aggressive, intense, driven, and supremely arrogant. He was a man who has been described as knowing no boundaries. Many people, adults and children alike, saw the same intimidating characteristics in him that kept his children in constant fear of his displeasure. Many also saw his intelligence, some say brilliance, and the charm he could turn on and off at will, and were unsurprised by his children's obvious adulation of him. Witnesses will tell you that Mr. José Menendez thought himself a superior being and indoctrinated his children into believing that he was in all respects perfect, that their family was superior to other families, that their way of life was superior to others, that being rich was all that mattered, that people who were not successful according to his terms were sheep. And he indoctrinated his children in an effort to get them to share those views. What he did get was total obedience from his sons. As our experts will tell you, Mr. Menendez, as a perpetrator of incest, was true to his aggressive, competitive, and fundamentally violent nature. As you will learn, Not all incestuous parents are violent towards their victims. Yet even the children of this so-called loving corruption feared death at the hands of their violators. This is because when a child is treated as an object of an adult's sexual desires, the child senses that he is not a person to that adult, just a thing. And instinctively, the child knows that things get broken and destroyed. Here, though, young Erik Menendez had more vivid examples of his father's potential lethality towards him. This, after all, was a man, you will hear, who pulled Erik's hair when forcing this 11-year-old to orally copulate him, who slapped him repeatedly when the child cried after his father ejaculated into his mouth for the first time, who forcibly sodomized him after repeated prior attempts caused the child to cry out in pain. For this act, José Menendez waited until no one else was home, presumably because he knew it would cause excruciating pain and that the child would scream. This, too, was a man who, in Erik Menendez's early adolescence, decided that as part of an already pervasive system of hardening or toughening up his child by terrorizing him, by purposely placing him in frightening situations, by coaching him in sports by methods so brutal they resulted in the child passing out on the tennis court, nearly drowning in the swimming pool. This man decided to add the intentional infliction of pain to his sexual activities with the boy. His excuse was that his son had shown himself not a Menendez. He had shown himself to be a weakling, because when receiving a shot in a doctor's office, José Menendez's son had cried. Therefore, Dad was going to make his son impervious to pain. He used a variety of objects: needles, tacks, wooden implements, knotted ropes. These episodes are what Erik Menendez calls the dark days. He and the experts will tell you that these dark days taught him many lessons: how not to feel physical pain, how not to think about terrible things that are happening to you while they are happening, how to hate yourself and feel yourself a coward, and how to never trust an adult, especially one who is supposed to love and care for you. Now, I'm sure that you sense that acts of incest such as these are crimes. But unlike the alleged crime that the prosecution here presents, those crimes occurred in total secrecy. No police were called. No crime scene photographs were taken. No one took Erik Menendez's part as a child to vindicate his repeated victimization. Well, let me amend that. One such crime scene, the scene of forcible sodomy and oral copulation and assault by José Menendez on his son, was photographed by the Beverly Hills Police Department. And you will see those photographs of Erik Menendez's bedroom in the house on Elm Drive. For these crimes did not stop in the boy's early adolescence. The molestation continued right up until the week before the homicides, right there in that bedroom on Elm Drive. And as Erik wondered as a child, you may also wonder, what of that other adult who was to love and care for him? What of his mother, while these violations by Dad are occurring over the months and years of this boy's childhood? 3 days before she died, Mary Louise Menendez admitted to her son, the son that everyone says adored her, that she knew all along of his father's molesting him. For years, Erik Menendez had suspected and then refused to believe that his mother knew. He loved his mother. He wanted desperately for her to love him. And although the evidence of such feelings towards him on her part was very slim at best, he chose to believe, he needed to believe, that however much his father may have hated him, his mother must love him in her own way. He could not tell her himself what was going on for many reasons. In the early stages of José Menendez's seduction of his son, which our experts will tell you is a classic pattern among incestuous males, he told the child that this was their special secret, to be shared with no one. And this younger son, so unused to any affectionate treatment from his ever-critical father, who so often compared him unfavorably with his older, smarter, stronger, and more talented brother. This child, wanting his father's love, believed that these early sexual acts, which his father called massages and mouth massages, were affection. He would not risk losing that affection by disobeying Dad's command of secrecy. Later on, when it got ugly and violent, Erik Menendez felt that he was the one that had done something wrong. He blamed himself for what he perceived was a loss of Dad's affection and felt he had nothing to complain about. Moreover, as many people will testify, his mother seemed angry at him and his brother all the time. She had uncontrollable rages over seemingly meaningless things. She never comforted him when he was ill. Indeed, she never acknowledged that he was ill and punished him for staying home from school with physical complaints by locking him in a closet while she ran errands. She constantly criticized him for his poor schoolwork, calling him stupid and dummy, and forced him into that same closet to do his homework when she imagined him not working hard enough. But she acted like she was afraid of his father. And it was obvious that his father treated her with a great deal of disrespect, both inside their home and in front of other people. So in spite of her harshness towards him, Erik Menendez long believed that his mother was Dad's victim too. And he felt protective towards her. He didn't want to burden her with his problems. In thinking about telling her about the molestation, particularly when he was throwing up after an episode with Dad, or was in pain, or was bleeding, he thought if he went to her, it might break up the family, assuming she would believe him and not blame him and do something about it. And he had been told since he was tiny that this family was the center of the universe and was totally involved with his parents in every aspect of his life. But part of him was also afraid of finding out that she wouldn't care and wouldn't help if he told her. So he didn't. Did she know, though, as Erik Menendez says she admitted just before her death? You will have to decide. You will have to weigh the evidence. 12 years of sexual acts in her own home, often as frequently as twice a month. You will have to ask the question, why did she never enter her son's room when José Menendez was alone with him? Why did she never attend to her son when he was throwing up in the bathroom?
Objection, this is argument, Your Honor.
Objection sustained. Let's get back to
All right,
the
you
recitation
will-
of evidence rather than your comment on the evidence.
This is not my comment, Your Honor. You will
Okay,
hear
it's my
testimony.
observation that it is a comment. So let's go back to
I'll
what it
reframe
is.
it, Your Honor. You will hear evidence that she never attended to her son while he was throwing up in the bathroom next door to her bedroom after a sexual episode with the father. But she would come if Erik were throwing up due to illness and complain about the mess. You will hear evidence that she never asked Erik why he was crying after Dad left his room, but instead taught him to put water in his eyes to erase the signs of his tears. You will also hear evidence that up until the age of 15, Erik's mother would periodically make her son submit to her physical inspections of his genitals, which she called checking you out. Was she concealing sick and embarrassing secrets that her therapist in California believed were sexually related? Witnesses will describe Mary Louise Menendez as a woman obsessed with status and social position, the day-to-day enforcer of a pressure cooker training program for her boys. Contemporaries of these boys describe the Menendez home as boot camp. People describe Mary Louise Menendez as a cold and distant, some say hostile parent towards her children. But her most striking characteristic to all who knew her and all who will testify about her here is that she was an extremely secretive and private person. Now, no family, not even normal families, are perfect. Yet Mary Louise Menendez portrayed hers as such. She was closest to her sister-in-law, Terry Baralt, José Menendez's sister, yet she lied to Aunt Terry regularly. She claimed, for example, that the boys were superior students, yet her younger son was barely average. She concealed from the world that Erik Menendez had learning disabilities, had trouble with understanding oral instruction, and was dyslexic. She knew these things because the schools that he was enrolled in pointed these things out to her. She never gave him remedial treatment. In fact, the Princeton Day School, where Erik was enrolled for part of grammar school and junior high school, signed him up for a special after-school learning class for children with disabilities, and his mother made sure that he never attended. People will tell you that it was clear that her attitude was that her children, one of her sources of prestige and status, had to be perceived as perfect for her to be perceived as superior. So she sacrificed her son's need to learn to her need to be seen as a superior person like her husband. Aunt Terry Baralt, to whom Mary Louise Menendez spoke every day, knew nothing of her nephew's learning problems, knew nothing of any trouble in the family. But she knew of Mary Louise Menendez's competitiveness, of her desire to raise winners, of her theory that you ignored your child's fears in order to make him tough, of her being a mother who rarely, if ever, displayed affection towards her younger son once he passed out of babyhood. As you will hear from a number of witnesses, including Erik Menendez, it was his mother who made sure that he trained for and competed in all the competitive level athletics that she and José Menendez pushed the children into. Swimming at 3, soccer at 6, tennis at 11. And she was as driven and as critical of less than perfect performance as was their father. With a schedule that left him no time for studying, with learning disabilities that made schoolwork difficult, she still demanded that her son pull down high grades. It did not seem to matter if he learned anything. Grades were the only measure of success. And to succeed, as that was defined in this family, meant win, win, and win. Be number one at all costs. A relative will testify that José Menendez's credo for success was cheat, steal, lie, but win. And since winning was all that mattered to Mrs. Menendez as well, she encouraged her children to cheat if necessary to win and participated in their cheating at school. She did much of their schoolwork herself, a fact that many of the teachers recognized. But those teachers will tell you that they were also intimidated by her and her husband, and although they knew there was trouble in that family, they never interfered. José and Mary Louise Menendez's efforts to isolate their children from the influence of any other adults was highly successful. Their son knew that no one ever stood up to them. He knew the power of his parents. He knew there were no adults who could rescue him. So for years, he did the best he could, tried hard, won trophies for his parents, all the while struggling with thoughts of suicide and death and shame. Early in his adolescence, Erik Menendez's life improved slightly. His brother, who he idolized, became his friend. José Menendez had always compared Erik unfavorably to his older brother and had encouraged the boys to compete with and distrust each other. You will hear an expert's description of José Menendez's style of running his family as being classic divide and conquer.
We are actually going to take a little bit of a break. That's a lot. So let me know what you guys think in the comments section. A lot of you are saying that you do hope that they get parole. Yeah, they are said to be model prisoners. They've started many programs in the system to help other inmates. They've done things like a community garden, but they've done so much more intellectually than just making gardens and starting organizations for inmates. I know that Lyle got his degree. Can't remember if it was a master's degree, but I would need to double check that, you guys. Degree. So his degree, and this is a source from NPR, which I would say is pretty valid. Lyle earned a sociology degree from the University of California through the prison program, which is pretty great. And I know that Erik did as well. But yeah, I mean, they really took the time in the prison system to better themselves. We've seen a lot of other cases that we have all talked about and covered where we talk about other inmates who have done nothing. to better themselves or have taken advantage of the free therapy that has been available to them. So that is really interesting. I feel because the family wants them to have a second chance, that they should have a second chance. If there's nobody really fighting for them to stay behind bars, then let them go. Yes, I love Leslie too. She is a badass. There are some really great moments in the trial. I'm thinking maybe another night when I have something to paint. Actually, I need to do the other side of this sign. It's actually for Amy. And I'm hoping she likes the colors. If you don't, Amy, you can tell me. You're not going to hurt my feelings. But this is going to be a sign for Amy. Let me do this full screen so we could take a look. And then we're going to put a little dragonfly on there in the corner. You do like them. Good. You promised me, because then you're not going to hurt my feelings if you want me to change it up. I swear. I like people to be happy. So we're going to engrave a sign like this for Amy. And then hopefully, she can use it in the background when we do our lives. Yeah, Southwestern colors. She kind of sent me what I call, and this is maybe a good tip for you guys. If you're ever asking someone for ideas for colors for something, my aunt taught me this, but you can go by something called like the Pantone guide. And let me show this light and see if it makes it a little better. So there are so many different colors, obviously, of the rainbow, but this makes it a little easier for me to work with my clients. And I'll say, go look at the Pantone grid and tell me what colors you like. Like, do you like cool blue, a warm blue? Because there's so many different tones of colors as well. So let's see. Yeah, so it's really cool. Yeah, ChatGPT is cool. I am trying to figure out how people are making images with it. Maybe they're upgrading their account to be able to do that. But, well, I hope you guys had a good time. I'm not going to lie, my back is hurting. So I am going to cut it short. We haven't even gotten through opening statements. And don't you feel like you know what has gone on? And I mean, like, let's be honest. Leslie is kicking ass compared to the other attorney in opening statements. That's my personal opinion. And I think why that is she really had a passion for this case and she really cares about it. I think TMZ caught up with her at a gas station recently and tried to ask her for a soundbite, and she was like, I can't talk to you. Client privilege. So that was interesting. I think she will be very excited if the boys, I don't know, we always call them the boys. I know they're men, but because they're brothers, if they get out early. Yeah. Agreed. So I believe the case. Oh, Amy, I keep asking you because I'm like, I want you to be happy with it. I want you to love it. And I have known people to be like, oh, I like it, when they don't really, but actually you're one of those brutally honest people. So I believe if you didn't like it, you would tell me. So I'm going to let this dry. Then I'm going to engrave it. I will probably engrave it, and then maybe I'll show it to you guys when we do closing statements. I don't know what day we'll do that. Maybe I'll do it tomorrow night. We'll see. Depends what everyone's up to. But thank you for everyone who dropped in. I know there's other lives going on and people are probably checking that out, but I appreciate you for dropping in and checking everything out. And I hope everybody has a fabulous night and a great rest of the week. And remember, go subscribe to Amy if you're catching this on the replay and you don't subscribe to her, Para Women Radio. And she's almost to 7K. And then this evening, Kelly from What's the Obsession is dropping a new video. And then we are all going to be on a panel Friday. And we are talking Watts. So we will see you all then. And thank you all for dropping by. See ya.